A few months ago, I started volunteering at a local animal shelter. I was 32 and trying to find something to do after my breakup. The shelter was a big old warehouse at the edge of town. I loved being around the barking dogs and the meowing cats. It felt good. One night I was cleaning the cat room when I saw a note under the door. It was small and folded, crinkled, like it had been there a while. It read, "They don't like strangers." A chill ran down my spine. Was it a prank? I tried to laugh it off, but it felt serious. As weeks passed, strange things happened. Food from the dog kibble stash vanished. I thought I saw something move in the corner when I spun around. There were cold spots everywhere, and I just couldn't shake the uneasy feelings creeping in each night. I told myself it was just my imagination. One evening I noticed extra-large paw prints on the floor. They didn't look like any of our animals. It puzzled me. I brushed it off and focused on the animals. When I wrapped up my shift, I walked past an old, rusty cage. It was smaller than the others and tucked away in a dark corner. I was sure it had been empty when I first arrived, but now it seemed pulled closer to the center of the room. I stood frozen, staring. Had I missed that before? I wanted to laugh at my own fear, but instead I felt a knot in my stomach. As the nights grew longer, the shelter felt more unsettling. I started avoiding the cat room. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Each time I walked in, the quiet pressed in on me. I heard whispers, soft, unintelligible sounds. They made me stop in my tracks. Shadows flitted past me, and when I turned to look, nothing was there. One night I stood still and listened. The barking faded away, and silence filled the room. Then I heard it, a soft meow that wasn't from any of our cats. My heart raced, and I turned toward the sound. Suddenly the door slammed shut behind me. I froze. I didn't know what to do. My heart was pounding, and an icy chill washed over me. I slowly turned back to look at that dark corner at the cage. I heard the whisper again. It was faint, but clear. "You shouldn't have come here." I felt that knot tighten in my stomach, and all my instincts screamed for me to run. But I stood there unable to move, staring into the darkness. I had never felt so alone and so scared. In that moment I wondered what was lurking, waiting in the shadows, as I faced whatever was watching me. I stared into the dark corner, my breath quickening as my mind raced. "You shouldn't have come here." The whispered words replayed in my head. I still couldn't move. What did it mean? I tried to shake off the fear, telling myself it was just my imagination. But something deep inside me knew that wasn't true. Then I noticed the rusty cage. It was smaller than the others, and as I took a cautious step forward, I felt the air grow colder. The whispers stopped, as if they were holding their breath, watching me. Still, I couldn't resist the pull to investigate. I lowered myself to get a better look, peering into the cage. Nothing. Just a pile of dust and cobwebs. I let out a shaky breath, almost laughing at my own foolishness. Just an old cage, I told myself. But as I stood up, something caught my eye. There was a piece of fabric hanging from the back, a tattered remnants of a blanket, perhaps once purple, but now faded beyond recognition. As I reached for it, the unmistakable sound of claws clicking against concrete echoed in the silence. I whipped around, my heart dropping. A large black figure stood in the doorway. I squinted, trying to make out what it was. My pulse raced. Was it an animal or something else entirely? "Show yourself!" I called out, my voice wavering. The figure remained still for a moment, then the sound of heavy breathing filled the room. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. The creature stepped further into the light, and I gasped. It was a large dog, but not any dog I had ever seen. Its coat was matted, and its eyes glowed with an intensity that made me take a step back. "Hey, buddy!" I stammered, trying to ease my fear. But the dog only stared, as if it was measuring my resolve. Then, as if sensing my fear, it let out a low growl that reverberated through the empty shelter. Panicking, I took another step back, my heart hammering against my chest. I had to get out of there. I turned to the door, practically running toward it, but as I reached for the handle, an ear-piercing howl rang out from behind me. The black dog lunged forward, baring its teeth. "No!" I screamed, flinging the door open and barreling out into the hallway. I raced down the corridor, my feet pounding against the cold floor. I could feel its breath on my heels, the sound of it closing in. I couldn't let it catch me. My mind raced with thoughts of what I'd find if I turned back. Maybe I was overreacting, maybe it just wanted to play, but deep down I knew something was very wrong. Just as I reached the exit, I heard that whisper again, closer this time. "You shouldn't have come here." I flung myself through the door and into the night, gasping for air. I stumbled to my car, not daring to look back. When I finally got in and locked the doors, my heart still raced as I drove away. But even as I left, I felt a chill creep in. What was waiting back in that shelter, and would it stop haunting me? I couldn't shake the feeling that I had only scratched the surface of something much darker. Now I needed to know more. What happened before I had to return? The sun had barely risen when I found myself parked outside the shelter once more, the building looming like a dark silhouette against the pale sky. My heart raced with a mixture of dread and determination. I wasn't sure what I hoped to find, but I had to go in. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The familiar odor of dampness and neglect hit me. I hesitated in the doorway, memories of the night before flooding my mind. The growling dog, the feeling of being watched. It all felt too real. I stepped cautiously, my footfalls echoing in the silence. The hallway stretched out before me, just as I had left it. I paused near the cage, peering into the darkness once more. The tattered blanket still hung there, swaying gently as if stirred by an unseen breeze. Then I noticed something new. On the ground next to the cage was a small, shiny object. It glinted in the low light. I knelt, reaching out to pick it up. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized it. A silver key, its surface engraved with intricate designs. What did it unlock? My heart raced again, but curiosity overpowered my fear. I pocketed the key and stood, scanning the hallway for any signs of life. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing hollowly. No response, just that oppressive silence. As I explored deeper into the shelter, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt heavier, as if charged with a lingering presence. The walls seemed to close in around me. I could almost hear the whispers again, that taunting voice warning me, but I ignored it, driven by a need to uncover the truth. I moved toward the back of the building, following the fading light. It led me to another room, one I hadn't seen yesterday. The door was slightly ajar, the hinges rusty and unmoving. I felt drawn to it. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was small and cluttered with old crates and forgotten furniture. Strange shadows danced on the walls, flickering as if something lived in the corners. That's when I saw it, a faded painting hanging crookedly on the wall. As I approached, my breath hitched. The image depicted a dog, eerily similar to the one that had chased me. Its eyes looked alive, almost pleading. Beneath the painting was a plaque, but the words were too worn to read. Suddenly, a low growl rumbled from the shadows. I froze. My heart pounded as I turned slowly, squinting into the darkness. I could make out the black silhouette again, standing just beyond the edge of the light. It was the same dog. "This isn't a game," I shouted, trying to muster some courage. "What do you want?" But instead of an answer, I heard a soft whine. My instincts told me to run, but part of me felt compelled to understand. The creature stepped forward, its eyes still glowing, but now they held a different expression, sadness, or perhaps desperation. Before I could react, the ground beneath me shifted. A loud crash echoed through the building, startling me. I spun around, heart racing. The shelves had collapsed, sending a wave of dust and debris into the air. Get out now!" shouted a voice from behind me. I turned to see a figure in the doorway, panic-stricken and wide-eyed. It was a woman, her hair tangled and her clothes tattered. "You shouldn't be here." Then everything went dark. I blinked, trying to clear the darkness from my vision. When the world came back into focus, I found myself on the floor, the dust swirling around me. I looked up to see the woman still standing by the door, her eyes wide with fear. "Can you see me now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yeah, I can see you," I replied, my heart still racing. "What happened? Why did you shout?" "The roof was coming down. It's unstable here. You have to leave." She stepped into the light, and I could see her face more clearly now, streaked with dirt and framed by wild hair. I hesitated, recalling the dog's growl, the strange painting, and the feeling of being watched. "What are you doing here?" I asked, rising to my feet, brushing dust off my clothes. "I came looking for answers." "Answers?" she scoffed, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "This place doesn't have answers, just more questions." I frowned, feeling a wave of frustration surge within me. "But I found this," I said, pulling out the silver key from my pocket. The light caught it, making it shine even brighter. "Do you know what it unlocks?" Her expression shifted, a mix of recognition and fear crossing her face. "You shouldn't have taken that. It belongs to something you don't want to know about." "Too late," I replied, feeling bold. "I'm already here. I want to understand what's going on." Before she could respond, the growl echoed again from the shadows behind her. My chest tightened as the black shape moved closer, emerging just enough for me to see it was still the same dog. It looked different in the light, its coat matted, but those glowing eyes still fixed on me, full of something I couldn't quite name. "Get back! It's dangerous!" she urged, backing away, but I felt rooted to the spot. "Why is it following me?" "Because it's not just a dog. This shelter, it's like nothing else." Her words were urgent. "It protects something. I don't know how it works, but if you're here with that key, you might be part of it." Part of it. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I shivered, suddenly aware that the shelter was more than just a building. It felt alive, connected to the people and animals that had come and gone. "What do you mean?" I pressed. "What could it be protecting?" But before she could answer, the ground shook again, this time more violently. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, and the shadows deepened. The dog stepped closer, eyes gleaming like beacons in the dim room. Panic surged through me. "What do we do?" I asked, needing direction, needing to escape. But just then the woman turned, her eyes wide in horror, as an eerie howl echoed through the air. It sent chills down my spine. "We need to find the door. Now!" Before I could respond, she darted past the dog, heading for an exit. My instincts told me to follow, but the creature stood its ground, blocking my path. I could feel its energy, and it felt both protective and threatening. I could either face it or run. But either choice could lead to unknown consequences, and in that moment, I knew I had to make a decision. I stood frozen, filled with uncertainty. The growl of the dog echoed in my ears, reminding me of its intensity. But the woman's desperate call pulled at me, urging me to move. I took a deep breath and decided to go for it. "Stay back!" I shouted to the dog. I edged sideways, hoping to slip past it and follow the woman. She was already through a doorway, the sound of her footsteps fading into the gloom of the hallway beyond. The dog shifted, blocking my path. Its gaze unyielding but somehow familiar. It didn't growl now. It just watched me like it was waiting for something. My heart raced, and I took another step closer. "I need to get out. Can you let me through?" To my surprise, the dog backed up slightly, giving me just enough room to squeeze past. I didn't hesitate. I rushed toward the door, feeling the weight of the key in my pocket as I sprinted. The hallway was darker than the room I'd just left. My eyes strained to adjust as I hurried forward, but I could still hear the rumble of the building. The walls felt like they were closing in. Then I saw her. The woman was at the end of the hallway, glancing nervously back at me. "This way!" she called, pointing to a door that seemed to glow faintly. I ran, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the walls. I reached her just as she threw open the door. "Hurry!" With an urgency I couldn't explain, I rushed through. It felt like walking into another world. The air was different here, thicker, charged with something I couldn't name. Inside was a room filled with strange objects and symbols. My pulse quickened as I recognized some of them from the drawings I'd seen in the first room. They weren't just decorations. They were keys to the mysteries of this shelter. "What is this place?" I asked, glancing around in amazement and fear. "It's the heart of the shelter," she said, scanning the room with her anxious eyes. "It's where they keep the secrets, where the real danger lies." A sense of dread washed over me. "Secrets? What kind of secrets?" Before she could answer, the growl returned, reverberating through the walls. I turned just in time to see the dog entering the room, its body tense, as if sensing something I couldn't. "It's coming," the woman whispered, her voice trembling. "We have to find the source of that howl before it gets us." "What? What source?" She pointed to a set of ornate boxes lined against the far wall, all locked tight. "They're protected. If something gets loose, it could destroy everything. We need to unlock them." My heart raced as I realized the key in my pocket might be the answer. "This key, could it open one of them?" "Yes," she said, "but we don't have much time." Then everything changed. The door slammed shut behind us, shaking the walls. I turned, panic rising like bile in my throat. I had to act fast. I stepped forward to the nearest box and fumbled with the key. My hands were shaking, but I had to know what lay inside, and as I slid the key into the lock, a deep howl echoed through the shelter, louder and more menacing than ever. The sudden realization hit me. Whatever was in that box could change everything, and I was about to open it. The key slid into the lock with a surprising ease, but the moment I turned it, the howl stopped. A heavy silence settled over the room, making the air feel thick. I pulled the key out and stared at it, my heart racing. "What happens now?" I stammered, looking at the woman. Her eyes widened. "You need to open it. We're running out of time." I took a deep breath and lifted the lid of the box. It creaked loudly, the sound echoing like a warning through the cramped space. Inside, I saw something dark and shiny, pulsating slightly as if it had a heartbeat. I couldn't tell what it was, a gem, a stone, or something more, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me too. Before I could reach in, the door behind us shook violently. The dog growled low and deep, a warning in its eyes. "It's not just the howl we have to worry about," the woman said, urgency coloring her voice. "Whatever's in here could awaken something worse." I hesitated. What if we open it, and it releases something terrible? "You have to trust me," she replied, her gaze darting between the door and the box. "If we don't act, we could all be trapped in here." I nodded, heart pounding. I reached in, fingers brushing against the surface of the object. It was cold, almost slick. Suddenly, it felt like a jolt of electricity ran through me. I pulled my hand back, gasping. Something seemed to awaken in the room, a vibration that thrummed beneath my skin. "What was that?" I whispered. "Just a taste of what's to come if we don't finish this," she said. Her voice shook slightly, betraying her fear. "We need to figure out how to control it. There's a way. There has to be." "I don't even know what it is," I shouted, panic rising. As if in response, the howl returned, more furious this time, shaking the very walls around us. I glanced back at the door, sense of doom swirling in my gut. Whatever was out there was getting closer. I slammed the lid shut and turned, desperate. "What do we do?" "Light the candles," she cried, pointing to several burning slowly on the edges of the room. "We need to create a barrier. Hurry!" I scrambled toward the candles. The shadows danced wildly, twisting in the corners of the room. With shaking hands, I lit one with a match from my pocket and watched as it flickered to life. The smell of burning wax filled the air, almost suffocating. I couldn't shake the dread that had settled over me. As I hurried to light the others, the growling intensified. I felt it in my bones, an echo of something dark crossing the threshold. My heart raced. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered out, plunging us into a chilling blackness. The only sound was the frantic beating of my heart and the dog's warning growl. "Stay close!" the woman shouted, her voice quivering as I felt her reach for my arm. "It's too late," I whispered, panic washing over me again. "What do we do?" And just like that, I realized whatever came next would reveal the true nature of this shelter, but was I ready to face it? In the pitch blackness, my breath came in shallow gasps. I felt the woman right next to me, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being utterly alone. The growling continued, low and menacing, and somehow it felt closer now. I was frozen, my body refusing to move, but my mind raced. "Do you hear that?" I whispered, straining to pick up any other sound apart from the dog's growl. "Yes, but we can't afford to panic," she urged. "Focus on the candles." I fumbled around, my fingers brushing against the cool walls before finally landing on the next candle. I struck another match, but my hands were shaking so badly that it took several attempts before it finally caught fire. The small flame illuminated a circle around us, casting eerie shadows. That's when I saw it. In the darkness beyond the light, something shifted, a silhouette darker than the shadows surrounding us. I turned to point it out, but the woman was already shushing me, her face a mask of fear. "Just keep lighting them," she whispered urgently. "We need a full circle." With each candle I lit, the shapes in the dark brushed closer, creeping in like a tide. The growling morphed into a low, incomprehensible whisper, weaving through the air like smoke. I fought the urge to scream, instead pushing myself to focus. It felt like eternity, but I finally reached the last candle. As I lit it, a sudden rush of wind swept through the room, extinguishing several flames. My heart dropped. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me, taunting and teasing. The woman grabbed my arm tightly, her grip grounding me. "We can't let them break through. We need to—" Before she could finish, a figure lunged from the dark. I didn't see it clearly, just a rush of movement and the feeling of coldness sweeping over me. The dog lunged as well, barking fiercely, but it was like the sound dissolved into the chaos. I stumbled back, panic rising in my throat. "What was that?" I shouted, my heart hammering in my chest. "I don't know. Just stay close." A sharp crash echoed through the room, followed by frenzied scratching against the door. It rattled on its hinges, and the woman's eyes widened. "They're trying to get in. If they do, we won't stand a chance." "Then what do we do?" I asked, desperation threading my voice. "Open the box," she shouted, ignoring my protests. "We need to unleash what's inside. It can protect us." I hesitated, my breath hitching at the thought. What if it doesn't? But before I could answer, the door splintered. I felt a surge of adrenaline rush through me. I didn't have time to think. I lunged at the box and yanked the lid open. As it creaked, a pulse of heat radiated from inside, mixing with the cold that had invaded the room. And then, from the depths of the box, a light blazed to life, a vibrant glow that pierced the darkness. The shadows hissed as they recoiled violently, repelled by the intensity. I clutched the edge of the box, my heart racing, realizing I was teetering on the edge of something monumental. "Now!" the woman screamed. "Draw it to us!" As I focused on the light, a force pulled me forward, almost beckoning. I felt the power surging through me like a wave. And then, just as quickly, the light flickered. In that moment of confusion, a chilling realization washed over me. Whatever I was about to release might not just protect us. It might consume us. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice a whisper against the howling chaos. I wasn't sure, but fear wasn't an option anymore. In that instant, I understood. This was our only chance. But at what cost? The moment I drew in a deep breath, the light surged again, illuminating the shadows around us with a fierce intensity. It felt like a living entity, pushing against the darkness and the chaos that thrummed just beyond the circle of light. But with that power came a weight, a feeling like something old and sinister was awakening. "Focus on the shadows!" the woman yelled, her voice sharp. I nodded, aware that if I failed to concentrate, the fragile barrier we had forged would crumble. The shadows began to writhe and swirl at the edges of our light. They pulsated with menace, and that low growl returned, now mixed with unearthly chattering, as if 1,000 voices were rising in unison. I watched, horrified, as they morphed into grotesque shapes, faces formed from darkness, twisted mouths whispering thoughts that were not my own. "Don't listen to them," she shouted, pulling me back when I instinctively moved closer to the flickering glow. "They want you to break. Hold on." I grabbed the box tighter, feeling its warmth seep into my palm. "What do we do with this?" I asked, panic creeping into my voice. "Channel it," she instructed. "Use it to push against them. Think of the light, the warmth. That's our ally." I closed my eyes, forcing the rising fear back. I thought of the safety within the glow, the comfort that flickered in defiance of the encroaching danger. I envisioned it spreading outwards, reaching into the darkness, illuminating every corner of the endless abyss that surrounded us. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed, and I felt the ground shake beneath my feet. I opened my eyes to see the door finally give in, splintering and breaking apart. A dark figure lurched into the room, its form shifting like smoke, twisting and jagged. "Focus now!" the woman shouted again, her voice fierce against the rising tide of dread. I clenched my fists, and with a concentrated push, I willed the light forward. It exploded outwards, bursting against the creature's form like a wave crashing on the shore. The creature shrieked, a horrible sound that sent chills through me as it recoiled, shifting in and out of focus. But just as quickly, the light flickered again. I felt it waning, like a candle burning out too fast. I glanced at the woman, and I could see the same panic mirrored in her eyes. "We need to reinforce it," I exclaimed, desperate. "What do I do?" "There's a chant," she shouted. "It's the key to summon a stronger bond. Start it. I'll guide you." "Now," I said, my voice quivering. "Yes, now." I took a shaky breath and started, mumbling uncertain words. She joined in, her voice steadying me. As the chant spilled from our lips, I felt the box pulse again. The light flared, fighting back against the dark wisps trying to invade. But the tension built. I could sense something shifting, something oh so unexpected, lurking just beyond my sight. "Behind you!" the woman screamed, and I spun around, heart racing. And then I froze. I saw another silhouette, not just a shadow, but a figure walking into the light. A woman, her face twisted in a horrible grin, covered in darkness. I blinked, unsure if my mind was playing tricks on me. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely escaping my lips. But instead of answering, she lunged. The scream built in my throat, but I was paralyzed, caught in the moment as the light flickered once more. I barely had time to react. The woman, all twisted features and shadow, was upon me. A scream escaped my lips at the last moment before I dove aside, narrowly avoiding her grasp. The impact of her presence sent a rush of cold energy coursing through me. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. "Keep chanting," the woman next to me urged, her eyes wide with terror. I could see her focus wavering as the menacing figure loomed closer. With no time to lose, I forced my voice to obey. I mumbled the words again, more fervently this time. Straining to maintain the flow of energy, I looked back at the creature, a part of me still hoping it was an illusion. But she stood real and terrifying, eyes gleaming with a ravenous hunger. The light flickered fiercely around us, but her shadow seemed to absorb it, growing darker and more defined. I felt the light sway as dread crept through my veins. The anguish in her smile twisted my stomach. "What do you want?" I shouted, trying to regain some control over this chaos. "Everything," came her whisper, a sinister echo that seemed to rattle the very air. With a flick of her wrist, she sent a wave of shadow crashing toward us, and I felt it wash over me like ice. I staggered back, the chant faltering on my lips. "Don't stop!" the woman yelled, and I clutched the box tighter, its warmth cutting through the cold. Somehow I knew that the key lay within it. Just as I began to speak again, I noticed a flicker of something in the creature's eyes, a flicker of doubt. "You're not real," I yelled, inspiration striking. "You're just a shadow." Her grin faltered, but she lunged again, her form cutting through the air. I remembered the box, its light glowing brighter in my mind. "Together!" I shouted, turning to the woman beside me. "We channel it together!" "Right," she responded, her voice gaining strength. We raised the box high, channeling every ounce of our fear and resolve into those small words. The chant flowed stronger, altering the air around us. The light intensified, pushing against the advancing figure. The creature screamed again, but this time the sound felt more like a retreat than an attack. I pressed forward, willing the radiant energy to pulse outward. I caught a glimpse of something else, a dark tapestry swirling behind her. It was filled with images of despair and regret, as if my fear materialized into a vast canvas of shadows. "Look!" I shouted, nudging the woman. "We're not just pushing back the darkness, we're fighting it." Her eyes widened, realization dawning. "It's feeding on our fear. We have to use our hope." Panic surged within my veins, but I grabbed onto the idea. With that thought, I recalled every moment that made me feel safe. Laughter with friends, warm, quiet nights, and the light of dawn breaking over a dark horizon. Suddenly, the chanting morphed into a desperate prayer, and I felt the power surge through me. Everything around us brightened as the shadows shrank back, shrieking in disdain. The woman standing next to me shouted louder, matching my resolve. Just then, something unexpected happened. I felt a tear in the air, like the world split open. "Hold on!" I yelled. Something was shifting. I could feel it, a new reality pulling us. Before I could grasp what it all meant, the shadows faltered. Then, as if a threshold had been crossed, the creature screamed one last time, a sound filled with rage, before everything went black. I gasped, trying to blink the darkness away, confusion washing over me. But the box still pulsed in my grip, and somewhere within that darkness I could sense something was coming. I blinked several times, the darkness slowly lifting like a veil from my eyes. I found myself standing at the center of the dimly lit room, the oppressive weight of fear beginning to dissipate. The box still glowed in my hands, a gentle pulse that felt almost comforting. The shadows that had encircled us were gone, evaporating as if they had never existed. I looked around, the remnants of the panic-induced chaos having vanished. The walls of the shelter no longer felt like they were closing in. Instead, they seemed to resonate with a silent hum. The woman stood next to me, panting, her face betraying a mixture of relief and lingering fear. Did we do it?" I asked, my throat dry. Her eyes scanned our surroundings, searching for any sign of the fates we had narrowly escaped. "I think so," she said, her voice trembling, "but I can't shake the feeling that there's still something lingering." The air was heavy with uncertainty, a palpable silence lingering between us as we waited for the other shoe to drop. I dared to hope that we had truly banished whatever darkness had resided in this shelter. But deep down, I felt the unease twist in my gut. Was it really over? I lowered the box, eyes widening, as the last flickering light sputtered and dimmed. In that moment I noticed traces of something else. A shadow lingered at the edge of my vision, swirling like a wisp, refusing to completely fade. "Look!" I pointed, dread pooling at the bottom of my stomach. Just then, the ground trembled beneath us. The faint glow of the box flared up one last time, illuminating a path that twisted and turned toward an unseen destination. The woman clutched my arm, fear etched across her features. "What is happening?" "I don't know," I replied, my voice catching in my throat, "but it seems like something still wants to contact us." The cacophony of whispers flared up yet again, swirling around the room like angry hornets. The shape solidified, taking form, and as it moved closer I found myself at a crossroads. The figure was dark, but I could now see a glimmer of something brighter. The creature that had prowled behind the door, that embodiment of fear, somehow fused with a reminder of warmth, a spirit not entirely hostile. "What do you want?" I finally found my voice amidst the rising chaos. "Don't you see? This place is your choice. The darkness was your fear, but the light is your light," the shadow replied, its voice both chilling and soothing. It seemed to encircle us, a metaphorical embrace of both sides. I felt emotions wash over me, anger, hope, regret, and yearning, each a memory that painted my understanding of this shelter and the beings within. "We're not here to destroy," I said, feeling a surge of bravery, "but to understand." With those words, the darkness hesitated, its grip slackening as the last remnants of my fear began to fade. The woman beside me tattooed her fingers on the box, channeling energy through it. Our connection felt stronger than before, intertwined, tethered by revelation. Just then, the shadows quaked as if responding to our declaration. The light emanating from the box erupted, enveloping the darkness entirely. I felt the tension surge and then retreat, as if a lifelong burden had been shed. I could sense the weight dissolving, leaving behind a vacuum of silence. But in that silence, unanswered questions lingered. What was this shelter really protecting? Was there something more profound that we hadn't touched upon? The echoes of the past danced in the corner of my mind, remaining tantalizingly just out of reach. "We've changed something here," I whispered, feeling the guiding presence of something greater than ourselves. The air shimmered with a muted energy, assuring me that though we had escaped one danger, we had not unraveled all the mysteries. The woman looked up, our eyes locking with an understanding that ran deeper than words. "We've broken a cycle, but there's still a piece of this place that needs to be understood. Do you think we should stay and explore?" I hesitated before nodding slowly. I shifted my gaze toward the darkness that had once threatened to consume me. But this isn't just about survival anymore. It's about learning. As we stood together, voices from the past whispering around us, one unresolved thought resonated in my mind. Was the shelter truly safe? Or was it merely harboring some secrets waiting to be uncovered? With those unanswered questions hanging in the air, the shadows seemed to retreat, but not without a lingering promise. The line between fear and understanding would forever remain. I moved toward the glowing box, now full of potential, alongside the spirit of the shelter that welcomed us both. Together, we would rewrite the shadows, seeking clarity in the fray, yet tethered to the enigma that remained. I knew this journey was far from finished. The shelter held as many secrets as it had fears, and I couldn't wait to discover them all, or risk facing the darkness again. That lingering uncertainty, that delicate balance between shadow and light, became my new truth, and there, in the heart of the shelter, our shared home, I knew we would find our way.